Displaying a user's page is going to be very similar to displaying the followers and the following pages from the previous lesson. In fact, the only difference between the two is that the user's page displays the user's ribbits, as opposed to who they follow and the users that follow them. Of course, the user controller also has the follow and following action methods. So in those cases, the code is basically going to be identical to what we did in the previous lesson. So let's start in our user controller, and let's implement these methods first, and then we will work on the views. Let's start with our followers method. Now, we don't have to be logged in order to view these pages. So we first just need to retrieve the user from the user's service. We will use the getAll method, although we are not seeing getAll there. That's because we are not inheriting our ribbit controller base. So let's make that modification. And now we will see IntelliSense for the getAll4 method, and then we will pass in username. Let's check if the user is null, and if it is, then we will return a not found exception. Because if the user doesn't exist, then this particular resource does not exist. But if we do have a user object, let's return view. We want to use the buddies view, although currently it is within our home directory. We need to move it to our shared directory, but we will do that in a minute. So let's use the buddies view model, and we will set user to user and buddies to user.followers. And that's all we need to do here. Then for the following method, let's just copy this code and paste it into following. But of course, instead of using the followers as the buddies, we can use followings. We also need to change the return type to action result. Let's now move our buddies view from our home folder into the shared folder so that we can use it here in the user controller. So I'm just going to drag that down into shared, and now that will work. So let's move up to the index action method. It's going to follow the same basic premise as our followers and following methods, except that we want to use a different view. We don't want to use the buddies view. We need a view that is going to, first of all, contain the user profile at the top, and then list the ribbits at the bottom. So let's call this view user profile. And we need a new view model for this particular view. So let's create that. We can call it user view model. So let's go to our view models folder. Let's right click, add class, user view model. The first property is going to be the user object. And then the second parameter is going to be an IEnumerable of ribbit. And we will call it ribbit. So let's close this new file. Let's go back to our user controller, and we will create a new user view model, and we will set the ribbits property to user.ribbits. Let's create this view, so right click, add view. We want to call it user profile. We want this to be a strongly typed view, and we want it to be typed as user view model. Now, I haven't built the solution, so if we look at the list, we are not going to see user view model, but since I'm just pasting it in, that is going to work just fine. This is not a partial view, so let's just add it. And then we basically want to do what we did within our buddies view. So let's open up that view, and let's copy and paste. Now we're basically going to reuse this top portion. So it kind of makes sense to extract this as its own partial view. So let's do that, and we will call it underscore user partial. So we will add a new view, underscore user partial. The model class is going to be user, and it is a partial view. So let's paste in that HTML, and we need to modify the code. So instead of model.user.profile, then we just need model.profile, and so on and so forth. So remove every instance of model.user, and then this will be good to go. So we can go back to our buddies, and we can use the partial method, underscore user partial, and then we will pass in model.user. And we can do that in the user profile view as well. So let's copy that, and let's paste it in. Then we want to display our ribbits. So I'm just going to copy this other div element from the buddies view, and I will paste it in. Let's call this ribbits, and instead of var buddy in model.buddies, let's do model or var ribbit in model.ribbits. We want to use the underscore ribbit partial view, and we will pass in ribbit. And I tell you what, on the user profile view, let's go ahead and let's add the form to create a ribbit. And we will do the same thing in the buddies view, so that when we are viewing those pages, we can create a new ribbit. We are rendering the action of create on the home controller. We've made quite a few modifications, so let's run our application and let's see if it works right now. After you log in, go to the profiles and then click on one of these names. I'm just going to click on mine. That should take us to our user page, but we get an error. An external component has thrown an exception. That's not very helpful, but if you click on continue, then we will see the actual error in the browser. And inside of the _user partial, we are using model.user. And that's what's causing the problem. So let's change that right fast. So let's go to user partial and let's find that model.user. There it is. Let's save it and then let's refresh the page. And there we go. We have the top portion, our ribbit profile, and then we have our ribbits. Now we don't have links to go to the followers and the following for this particular profile. We need to add those, but we can type in followers. That works. You can also type in following, and that will work as well. It would also be nice to have a button to follow the given user. Now, in our case, this doesn't make sense because we are logged in as Jeremy McPeak, so we don't want to see that. But if we look at John Doe's profile, it would be good to have the follow or unfollow button here. So we can add that to our profile. So let's stop debugging and let's open up our profile partial because that is where that code is. And we can take this and we can make this a partial view, which makes sense because we first of all want to use it inside of this _user profile partial view. And we also want to show it inside of our user partial view. So let's copy this. Let's add a new view. Let's call it _follow button partial. We use the user class in this code, so it needs to be strongly typed for a user. This is a partial view. And then we can just paste that code in. And then in _user profile partial, we can get rid of this code and we can just call the partial method and pass _follow button partial. And then pass in whatever the model is here. What is the model? It's a user, so model. And then we can reuse this in our _user partial. So after we display the bio, we can just add that button there. And while we're here, let's go ahead and let's add some links for the ribbits, the followers, and the following. We'll start with the ribbits, and we are going to use the action link method. The text for this link is ribbits. The action is index. And then we want to specify the controller and the username. So we will do that with an anonymous object. We will set controller to user, and then username equal to model.username. And let's go to the followers. Once again, we will use the action link method. The text is followers. But get this, we are only going to specify the action as followers. And even though we are using this _user partial view in two different places, this is going to work because this partial view is used for the home controller and it's used for the user controller, both of which have followers and following action methods. So if we don't specify the controller, it's automatically going to default to whatever controller is generating this view. Let's scoot on over to following and let's replace this with a link. HTML.actionLink, following, and then the action is following. So let's run this again. Once again, after logging in, go to the profiles and then click on one of the users. We now have the unfollow and follow button, and we have links to view the ribbits, the followers, and the following for a given user. Now notice in the bottom left-hand corner, the URLs are exactly what we want them to be. To view the ribbits of a profile, we go to the user page, and then to view the followers, in this case it's John Doe/followers, and then John Doe/following. But if we go to the followers page, which is on the home controller, we have these same links. And if we move the mouse over ribbits, we can see that that will take us to our user page. If we move over to followers, we see /followers and then following/following, which gives us the behavior that we want to see. Now our create ribbit form is not in the correct place. So let's go to our layout page And let's modify the markup. All we will need to do is move the right panel above render body. So if we go back to the browser and refresh, we will see that that displays correctly. And let's post a ribbit from a user profile page. Let's ribbit, and there we go. So now we are almost done with our application. The only thing that we lack is the ability to edit our profile so that we can edit our display name, our biography, and our website. Although we haven't used our website, but we can just stick that within the user profile and everything would be fine. But we are going to do that in the next lesson.